everyone. Welcome. Thank you for joining us for the information session for the Columbia Climate School's Sustainably Developing Your Community Pre-College Academic Year Virtual Workshop. My name is Laurel Zimashihi, and I lead the professional learning, pre-college, K-12, and educator offerings at the Columbia Climate School. And I am joined by the instructors of the pre-college workshop, Margie, Turrin, and Marisa Annunziato from Lamont-Doherty Earth Observatory. So you will have a chance to ask them direct questions about this workshop. They're going to share a little bit more about the workshop content, the learning objectives. So you'll really get a sense of what you will be gaining by the end of this 7-session workshop. But just in case you aren't familiar with the Climate School, I can start with a little introduction. The Columbia Climate School's mission is to develop and inspire knowledge-based solutions and educate future leaders for just and prosperous societies on a healthy planet. The school is set up in a way that allows us to better connect and amplify and advance new areas of climate inquiry, research, and impact across Columbia and beyond. The Columbia Climate School is committed to offering transdisciplinary educational opportunities for graduate, undergraduate, and pre-college students, as we recognize that you all are the next generation of change makers and are essential stakeholders to addressing the climate crisis. The pre-college programs are for high school students grades 9 through 12 who are interested in extending their learning in climate and sustainability beyond the classroom in areas of climate change and sustainability. Our pre-college programs provide an educational experience for high school students that are passionate about the environment, curious about ways to incorporate climate science and sustainability into every career they want to pursue, and activated to lead solutions at a local level. This workshop is going to provide the same level of rigor and quality as our degree programs, and they're taught by Columbia staff. All of our pre-college programs are taught by Columbia faculty, researchers, practitioners, educators, and staff. These learning opportunities deliver high-caliber online programs, but on a flexible schedule because we know you all are very busy. So this workshop is 15 hours in length, and it's offered in English. It's going to run from October 26th through December 7th on Saturday mornings at 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. Eastern. The last session will be a 3-hour session from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern time. Zoom is used for the discussion. It's going to be a Zoom meeting, so everyone is really encouraged to have their video on and be really lively in the discussions and the activities that are going to be held in the workshop. Everything is recorded, so the participants will have access to these recordings and materials for up to 1 year. So if you're busy and you miss a session, don't worry, everything will be recorded and you'll have a chance to ask the instructors any questions that you may have about the sessions that you missed in office hours. We also use Coursework's learning management system to house all of our recordings and materials. So it's really easy. It's like a one-stop shop place for everything that you need for the workshop. There are no required readings or homework, but the instructors will suggest readings to enhance your learning if you wanted to dig deeper on a few topics. And there may be a final project that will allow you to apply your new knowledge and skills, but on the day-to-day, there is no homework. And so while there might be some of these tasks like the suggested readings or a final project, your instructor will not be administering any grades. So no official grading as part of this workshop. And therefore, no transcripts from Columbia University as well. This is open enrollment. There's no application period, but during the registration, you'll see that we're going to be asking you a few questions for us to get to know you better. So please take the time to complete those. And everyone at the end of this workshop will receive a certificate of participation, which is a non-credit certificate. You are not a student of Columbia University through this participation, but the certificate can be, a part of your resume. The fees for this workshop, it's $1,900. There are reduced rates available for participants from past workshops or past pre-college programs, students that are children of staff, faculty, or alumni of Columbia University, and students of Title I schools. Actually, as an attendee of this workshop live, you are also eligible for a 10% discount. So please email me at learn@climate.columbia.edu for more information and for that discount code. And just keep in mind that for any of these other discount eligibilities, we will need to ask for documentation for the reduced rates. Okay, the registration deadline for this workshop is October 18th. So it's 1 week before the workshop starts. I think, yeah, that's it in terms of the workshop logistics. So for this info session, just a few Zoom best practices, etiquette pieces. We're going to use the Q&A to ask any questions. The chat box is disabled. Please ask questions throughout the session. So as soon as they pop in your head, write it down, and then we'll be able to answer all your questions live at the end. All right, so without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Margie and Marisa to share more about the workshop.
Thank you so much, Laurel. I really appreciate that introduction, and we're really happy to be here. And Marisa is going to share the slides, and we'll be able to go forward. Awesome.
Can everyone see that?
So
okay, perfect.
Yeah, I can see it, so I see other people can see it too. We're really happy to have you at this information session about sustainably developing your community. Marisa and I have both been involved in this program for a number of years and find it really empowering for youth as well as really exciting for us. And I also think it's a great way to educate adults and others in your community. So we're looking forward to it. So we'll go to the next slide and introduce ourselves, and then I'm going to turn it right over to Marisa for the next few slides. So my name's Margie Turrin. I'm Director of Educational Field Programs here at Lamont-Doherty Earth Observatory, which is part of Columbia's Climate School. We're a science research organization, and we really study everything from the center of the earth into the atmosphere, but we have a really strong focus on sustainability and climate. And I'll turn it over to you, Marisa.
Hi, everyone. I'm Marisa Annunziato. I'm the Education and Outreach Coordinator at Lamont. So I help to run a whole variety of our different types of education programs that we are involved in here at Lamont. So Margie and I work together a whole bunch. And as Margie mentioned, we've done sort of an in-person version of this workshop in local high schools, and it's been very successful. We've been doing it for a number of years, and we've had really great feedback from students, teachers, as well as local people within the county who actually are involved in city planning and local planning. So let me just minimize my little thumbnail so I can see the slides. So I just wanted to briefly talk about why this workshop is so valuable. So every one of us lives within a community, but very rarely are we actually involved in the decisions that are being made within our county or town. And we really want to consider why that is. And throughout this workshop, we're really going to learn ways in which you can get more involved in decision making within your community. And we'll talk a little bit about how a lot of different areas are really encouraging their local people or residents, especially youth, to get involved in decision making. So we'll talk a little bit about that. Communities that are developed using sustainable planning really help to mitigate climate change by reducing greenhouse gas emissions. I know a lot of us are aware of climate change, and it's a really big focus, especially in a lot of youth. They're very concerned about climate change. And so we'll talk a lot about how sustainable planning really helps to mitigate that problem, but as well as adapt to potential impacts of climate change. Every city has the opportunity to be what we like to call climate smart, or develop in a way that makes them more prepared for the impacts of climate change, but it helps to also reduce those greenhouse gas emissions. But they can only do this if they are being sustainable, if they're being very thoughtful in their decision making, if they're engaging their local community and receiving feedback from their residents. So this workshop will also target a lot about climate smart communities and how different communities can go forward in sustainable planning. Youth is a really big part of this decision-making process, and often youth aren't involved in the different types of city planning. But you guys really should be. It's your community too. It shouldn't just be the adults within your community that get a say in what happens in your community. And especially with climate change, that's your future. And you guys should have a voice at the table today, because these decisions will impact your future. And finally, you guys will really gain the knowledge and skills that will allow you to actually create change within your community. We'll talk a little bit more about that, like what we plan on having you guys do in a moment. But you guys will really gain skills and think about how you can create different plans, how you can talk with stakeholders, as well as people who are involved in city planning and local planning. So these are some topics that will be covered throughout the course of the workshop. So the first topic will be sustainability. So we are going to talk about what sustainability is and what actually is sustainable planning. This might be a term that you've heard of, but you might not be aware of what actually goes into developing an area with sustainability in mind. We'll talk a lot about climate. Climate impacts are really going to gear and sort of veer us in certain ways when we are planning, because climate change is going to have a variety of different impacts, going to impact different areas in different ways. And so as different communities, we need to consider those potential impacts and be prepared for them. You guys will be assessing your own community and sharing with the other students within this session. So you're really going to take a moment to consider the strengths of your community and how you can continue to leverage those strengths. But you'll also consider maybe some weaknesses your community might have and some areas where your community could really gain to improve or work upon. We'll also consider stakeholders. So stakeholders is this term that a lot of people hear, but they don't really understand what goes into the process of working with stakeholders, getting involved with stakeholders, and using them as an ally to help you move forward with your planning and your decision making. We are going to have you guys each pick your own site. So a site within your local community that you want to visualize a potential plan for. So when we do this in person, we pick different sites in which they're actually up for redevelopment, or it's an empty plot of land that is currently being talked about within the community. What should go there? What should we build? What should we do with this land? So you guys are going to pick a site within your own community. So it's very local and applicable to your own lives and your community. And you're going to end up developing your own sustainable plan for this area. And we'll give you a lot of different tools and resources, and we'll work with you guys to really help you guys amazing design plan. And then finally, we are going to give feedback. So you guys are going to share with one another, and we'll discuss maybe potential improvements to your design plan, more stakeholders to work with going forward. So we'll be giving each other feedback. And these sessions are highly interactive. So we are going to be working together, but also independently. So we're going to be working together to just consider some of these different ways of sustainable development. But you guys will be working more independently on your local site project, because obviously that should be near and dear to you because it's a local area within your community. But overall, we're really going to be diving into our communities, and sharing about your own community can really help other students consider, oh yeah, maybe my community also can stand to improve upon that, or actually my community actually has this feature and this is the way it works and these are the benefits that come with that. So we will be working together, but you guys will be really considering your own local community to make it really personal. And these are just some, were you about to do the slide, Margie? Sorry. Are you doing this one? Yeah, okay.
I was.
I'll stop talking.
So, no, that's great. So both Laurel and Marisa gave us some really good introduction on this. And I thought what I would do is just kind of highlight some of the different sessions and what we would hope to cover in those sessions. So the first session would be just a general introduction. First of all, we want to know about you. We would also want to know where you're from, because that can have an effect on what tools are available or what planning pathways are available for you. So I have run this workshop in different states, so it's definitely something that's transferable, but we normally work in New York, so it will be interesting to hear the differences between the different states and what opportunities are available. So we'll start with what is sustainable planning, and then we'll do this kind of an introduction to community enhancing features, which is a tool that we have that just looks at how can you really enhance a community without a lot of expense or change, and looking at the different age groups that might benefit from that. So trying to hit across multiple ages and stages of life. And the reason for that is that we want our communities to be multifaceted and benefit from a variety of different approaches and aspects that are there. And we also want to make sure that our communities will hold everyone that's there and hold on to them for the present as well as into the future. So we don't want our communities to be lopsided. That will be our first session. Our second session will focus on what Marisa just mentioned, this community assessment. So really you guys going out, and we have a tool that we use for this, and identifying the strengths and weaknesses of your community. And you'll do this by actually categorizing what you identify as a strength and a weakness. And then you'll code those on a scale of 1 to 5 as to how important they are, how minimally they are in terms of being an impact. And then from there, we'll kind of look at how does climate serve as a disruptor to any or all of these items. So definitely climate is a disruptor for our planning, and we just need to identify how to deal with that. So we'll focus in on that. Then the next meeting, we'll talk about climate smart communities. So that is actually a New York term, but it works, the concepts of it and the tools that are part of it will work in many different states. I actually assume that it is part of many different states, although I have to be honest, before we start meeting with you, we should do some looking into that as well and figure out how other states are addressing this topic. So there are ways that you can get benefits from being a climate smart community. You can apply for grants, but it's a codified thing that's very well articulated, what you would need to do so we can share and have conversations around that. And what are the opportunities for you all to be part of moving forward your community to be a climate smart community. Then the next session, we'll look at the tools that we have developed for sustainable planning. We have planning cards, we have impact significance assessments for those cards. So how important would it be to have these different aspects in our community? What are the benefits in terms of the ecological benefits, the climate benefits, the water conservation benefits? All of those are part of this structure that we've created. And then we'll look at green infrastructure in its role, especially with climate, and other resources and how they can be implemented in your community or in your planning. Where do they make sense? Where don't they make sense? I mean, they might be nice features, but they're not really called for in specific situations. So we'll be going through all of that. Then at that point, we're ready to really look at what is this local project that you're interested in. So we'll have a conversation about what makes for a good project to tackle for a first time. What should you be looking for? And we'll have conversations around that. At that point, you would bring in these concepts to us so that you could share with us what it is that you're looking at and how that might be addressed. And then we'll be turning it back to you to apply some of these tools. The following session, we'll kind of touch bases and see where you are in terms of developing your plan. What are the hurdles or challenges you've come across? Or what are some of the things that you might want to share with other people? We'll talk about stakeholders and other community supports that might be available. Who could be relied on to help bring this project to reality? And then finally, we'll share and discuss on our last class, which is 3 hours, as I think Laurel mentioned. We'll have a chance to share each one of these projects and how you could actually take this work forward. So we'll hopefully through a couple of these sessions be identifying agencies in your community, opportunities in your school, opportunities in your community that you could work with in terms of stakeholders and bringing this forward, because it certainly makes sense to work together to move things along. I'm ready for the next slide, Marisa. Great. So the platform that we're going to be using is this Google Projects. And this is a map-based opportunity. So you really go in and you can select the space. We can all see the actual space, which is great. And then there are tools that are available in there that you can actually use to identify features that you might want to change. You can add visuals of some of the features that you want to incorporate in your particular project. So for the next couple of slides, I just put in some demonstrations of some of the projects that students have developed through the course of the year. So we'll just spend a minute talking about each one of them. This happened to be oops, would you mind? I'm sorry, could you go back one more? Sorry, Marissa. I just wanted to talk for a second about that particular project. Thank you. So this was a project that is up in a somewhat undeveloped area. The space is open, but they were looking at how they might develop it. And one of the thoughts or opportunities that was there was to try and turn it into more of a education facility, as well as they wanted to turn it into a farm, which is kind of an interesting concept. They wanted to put in education panels, so those are there, and then just kind of looking at how we might reuse some of those spaces with solar, forest parking lots, like what are some of the pieces that might pull together an underground restaurant, which is interesting, with vegetable gardens on it so that they could take advantage of the vegetables right on site and serve them in their garden. So they had a whole plan developed around this. So the plan is not just what you see on the map. There's a whole series of other pieces that go into how to best practice use this space in a sustainable way. So this was the first of a couple, and now I'm ready to go forward. Great, thank you. So this was a logistics park project. So this was a site that was identified as an industrial site. And it actually is in a kind of a wetland area. And so the students really thought about what could we do instead of this area. They literally had wanted to just basically pave this over. This was a slated project by the local town. And so they proposed something very different. They proposed allowing that water resource to exist and taking advantage of it in a way that would incorporate some open space, that would partner with, there's an art group that actually operates just across the main thoroughfare there. And so they were hoping to turn it into some kind of an outdoor sculpture garden. And so really make use of it as an arm or an extension of that art institute while keeping it more natural and allowing that water to work in the way that it was intended. And then the third project. Great, thank you. So this was a completely different land use area. This is in a very densely populated section in a highly developed downtown area. And it has suffered from extreme flooding over the years. And so they really had to think hard about what they wanted to do with this particular project. It's actually sat empty in large part since we've had some really bad storms in the area. And so really trying to figure out how to deal with some of these different aspects that were there. So again, kind of thinking about green infrastructure, and we'll spend a lot of time thinking about that since climate is designed, or is forecast to bring a lot more rain into certainly some of our areas. So looking at how we could use green infrastructure to help absorb some of that water and reuse it. Thinking about green roofs in this particular area, minimizing pavement, how to bring people together and in a way that didn't overwhelm the space and opened up the space just a little bit because it's already so densely developed. So again, these are just 3 different projects.
And just to finish up, we're just going to talk briefly about the logistics again of this workshop. So as Laurel mentioned earlier, this workshop will all be done over Zoom. Everything will be taught in English. And we really do encourage you guys to participate. When we ask a question, please, feel free to unmute, answer our questions. Decision making and planning is such a collaborative process that we really want you guys to be practicing that throughout our workshop. So don't be scared. Margie and I are not scary. So we really want you guys to feel comfortable sharing and working with the other students within the workshop. And these are the dates we are planning on running the workshop. So again, all of the workshops will be from 10 to noon. Besides, on December 14th, it'll be a 3-hour session from 10 to 1. And please note, we do break for the Thanksgiving holiday. So the Saturday after Thanksgiving, you'll notice that we do not have a session that weekend. So we jump from November 23rd to December 7th. And I think that's all that we have to share. So I guess we will turn it back over to Laurel and you guys to ask some questions.
Thank
I
you
just
so
wanted,
much.
can I just one final thing, and that is that when we run these classes, we do an awful lot of breaking students into groups to chat and talk, and we aren't big on talking at. We really want to make sure the students are interacting with each other, sharing their own ideas, and really developing concepts independently. So, and I know that we've talked about there would be no homework, and that is absolutely true. But you might need to do a little bit of research in your own community in between times so that you can do that community assessment or actually develop that plan. And we'll provide some time for plan development in the session, but it might take just a little bit more. So just to clarify that.
Perfect. Yeah. Thanks, Margie. I don't see any questions. I encourage everyone online, please use the Q&A. Ask any questions that come to your mind. One thing that I just wanted to share, we've been running these workshops, these pre-college workshops since 2020, and we always have a really diverse cohort of students coming from different geographic regions all over the world, but also students that have different perspectives, different lived experiences, different thoughts on topics. And I think the opportunity to have conversations around like these topics on climate, sustainable planning, with such a diverse audience is very unique, especially for high school students. You might not always have that in your own classroom. And so that's one of the things I wanted to highlight, and something that's going to be fun and different for this particular program, because it typically has always been done locally in New York. But I will mention that Margie and Marisa, they work with high schoolers all throughout that county. And so they do bring students all together. And so there is this exchange of ideas that really helps to make these projects that they're developing really come to life. Great. So we do have a few questions as I've been chatting. Christopher, who founded this workshop, because it seems like a really good idea. So Margie, I think this one goes to you.
Yeah, thank you. So this is a project that's been running for well over 20 years. And I agree with you. I think it's a really wonderful way to empower youth and also to share information from emerging ideas with those people that are in planning who haven't been back in school and learned some of these things. It wasn't founded by me. I've been involved for quite a period of time. It was founded in a county in Westchester, which is another county in New York, as part of a water protection plan, believe it or not. And we've kind of merged it a little bit, adjusted it a bit, and really recognized the value of it in terms of climate and the climate impact. So I think it's grown over the years and really taken on a new shape. And I really appreciate what you're saying, Christopher, and I think that it is a really powerful program. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to doing it.
Absolutely. And to kind of piggybacking off of that, where you said it started around water resources, Anna's asking, for our sites, could it be somewhere developed like a reservoir?
Oh, absolutely. And in fact, we have a local reservoir in our particular county that has been proposed for development all around it, and kind of a reuse of it. So I think that that's a perfectly appropriate land use, and I think it'll be really interesting. So yeah, absolutely.
Great. And then someone asked, what techniques do you use in a virtual environment to ensure engagement of more introverted participants?
Marisa, do you want to handle that one?
Yeah, so as we mentioned before, we do a lot of breaking into breakout rooms and allowing students to work together in smaller groups, which a lot of times allows for maybe more introverted people to feel a little bit more comfortable sharing their ideas when they're in smaller groups. And again, we really encourage like a safe environment for everyone to share their ideas and views. So even if you're a little bit more introverted, we'll really get to know each other over the course of the different sessions. So really hope that you feel comfortable by the end sharing, especially when you're in those smaller groups. Sometimes it's maybe a little less scary to share with someone your own age versus like to Margie or I. So really use those breakout rooms as an opportunity to engage with your peers. Yeah.
Yeah, and we would never want to pressure anyone to participate in a way that wasn't comfortable with them. But we do feel as if you learn more from having the conversations and sharing your ideas with other people. So, as Marisa said, we really take advantage of breakout rooms to kind of make those smaller groups work and hopefully make people feel more comfortable. It's always worked for us to have a nice kind of safe collegial group. So hopefully that's the case. And if that was not something you felt comfortable with, I hope that you would feel comfortable telling us that.
Yeah, and in some of the, I don't know exactly if this is embedded into the workshop plan as of right now, but workshops I've done with Margie and Marisa that are virtual in the past, we've used, online tools that are anonymous. We've done polls. So there are ways of engagement where it's not always unmuting and sharing on the spot. So I think there's a lot of creativity that can be embedded in the workshop as well. And
Yeah.
is there a moderator for these breakout rooms?
So we pop in and out of the breakout rooms we don't assign a moderator. So let me just start by that. We don't have the staff capacity to do that. We will pop in and out and make sure that things are going okay if people have questions, but we also step away so that students can talk with each other rather than us kind of hovering in the background. We think that that's really an important time for you all to sit and have a conversation. You will go in with an actual concept of what the goal is, what your achievements should be. So it's all pretty well articulated, but we don't, as I said, we don't have somebody hovering in there or managing that space.
Great. And Anna also asked, do all states have grant and reward programs similar to the ones that were spoken about earlier? Do you recommend places to brainstorm and research for them?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And as I hope I mentioned, I don't know the answer to that, and we will start looking into that. But I'm sure we'll be doing it along with you during the course of the workshop, because I doubt that we'd be able to go into all 50 states and have a chance to look through it. Where we found it for New York, it's at the state level. So New York State has a climate office, which may not be the case in every other location, but that's where it starts for us. And we absolutely, once we get the group of people that are registered for the class, we can start digging into more of a localized look, because you're absolutely right. That is really important. But I would start at the state level.
Yeah, and that's the kind of beauty of this workshop is we don't know where people are going to be coming from, like who's going to register. And so the conversations around different geographic legislation is kind of going to be decided by you all. So, but I would say, Anna, sometimes it's not always called like a climate office. It might be called like environmental protections, environmental conservation, maybe sustainability office. So I would kind of dig around on your government state website and see what you can dig up.
Yeah,
And
absolutely. And in some places, it's actually in an energy component. So, that's another place to look. And, really just the hidden silver lining for us is that we're going to learn a whole lot from doing this workshop as well. We're always interested in knowing what's going on somewhere else. So this will be fun.
oh yeah. And the last question that we have is, what do we look for in applications? So this is an open enrollment registration workshop. So it's not a formal application process. There is a registration link on our website that you